They ripped her dress to break her spirit, but they never imagined they were awakening a fighter, would shake the whole school. The story begins in a quiet town where most of the people looked the same, talked the same, and thought the same. It was the kind of place where everyone knew each other, and outsiders were often noticed quickly. One bright summer morning, something different happened. A moving truck pulled into a quiet street, and from it stepped a family that looked nothing like the others. Among them was a young black girl named Amara. She was just 13 years old, with big curious eyes, deep brown skin, and thick curly hair tied neatly in a braid. Her smile was shy but hopeful. Amara had moved many times before, but something about this move felt different. Her parents had told her this new town would be better, safer, with good schools and good people. Her father had gotten a better job, and her mother, who loved sewing, had already opened her small sewing corner in the new house. Amara wanted to believe this new place would give her a fresh start. On the night before school started, Amara couldn't sleep. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking about what the students would be like. If they'd be friendly, if she'd make friends, if anyone would like her. Her heart was full of questions, but she told herself to stay brave. Her mother came in quietly, carrying something wrapped in tissue paper. It was a dress she had spent days sewing, bright yellow with green patterns, made from African fabric, full of culture and love. "This is your power," her mother whispered. "Wear it with pride." The next morning, Amara woke up early. She took a deep breath, wore the dress, and stood in front of the mirror. She didn't look like the other girls she had seen in town. She didn't wear jeans or crop tops or straightened hair, but she looked like herself, and that was enough. As she walked to school, she felt every step heavy with hope. Her backpack was packed, her heart nervous but excited. When she reached the school gates, students were already gathering in small groups, talking, laughing. Amara's steps slowed. No one looked like her. She tightened her grip on the straps of her bag and walked in. Inside the school, things didn't go the way she'd imagined. Her first class was English, and when she walked into the room, conversations paused. Eyes turned toward her. Some students stared for too long. No one smiled. The teacher gave a short, polite welcome, told her to sit in the last row, and continued. The lesson, at lunch, she walked into the noisy cafeteria with her lunchbox. She looked around, searching for a place to sit. Every table was full, yet somehow no one made space for her. Some students turned away when she walked close. Some even whispered to each other and laughed. She finally sat alone in the corner, quietly eating her food. She felt their eyes on her and her heart sank, but she tried not to show it. In the next few days, the pattern continued. No one called her names directly, but the silence, the whispers, the way people stared at her hair or her clothes. Things spoke louder than words. Even in group projects, she was left out or ignored. She felt like a ghost walking through the hallways. But Amara remembered what her mother said. They don't know you. They're scared of different. It's not your fault. Still, it was hard. One day in science class, she raised her hand to answer a question. The teacher called on her, and she gave a smart, clear answer. A few students rolled their eyes. One of the popular girls, Kayla, whispered something to her friend, and both of them laughed. Amara heard just one word: show off. Kayla was one of those girls who walked like the world belonged to her. She had a group of friends who followed her everywhere, copying her hairstyle, her words, even her laughs. Kayla always wore the latest fashion, always had perfect makeup, and everyone wanted to be in her group. Amara had tried to stay away from her, but it seemed like Kayla had noticed her anyway, and not in a good way. A few days before the school dance, tension got stronger. Posters for the event were all around the school, and everyone was talking about what they were going to wear. Amara didn't think about going at first. She had no friends to go with. But one evening, her mother saw her staring quietly at one of the posters she had brought home. "You should go," her mother said. "You deserve to enjoy, just like anyone else." So they began working on a new dress together. This one was blue with golden patterns, long and flowing. It shimmered when it caught the light. Her mother added a golden belt and earrings that matched. "This will make them see." You, she said with a smile. Not just your skin or your hair. You. The night of the dance, Amara got dressed slowly. She looked at herself in the mirror and felt proud. She looked beautiful. She hoped maybe, just maybe, things would be better tonight. At the school gym, music was playing, lights were flashing, and students were dancing and laughing. Amara walked in, holding her breath. The moment she entered, people turned to look. Conversations paused. Some students stared. A few whispered and giggled, but she kept walking. She stood at the side, watching others dance. No one asked her to join, but she still smiled, pretending not to care. Kayla noticed her from across the room. She whispered something to her friends, and they all started walking toward Amara. Amara's heart began to race. She straightened her dress and stood tall. Kayla smiled sweetly, too sweetly, and said, "That's a very interesting dress." One of the other girls said, "Where did you get it?" "Halloween store." They all laughed. Amara didn't answer. She turned away to walk off. That's when one of the girls grabbed the edge of her dress. Amara gasped. Another girl pulled on the sleeve. Before she could stop them, they ripped the bottom part of her dress and shoved her back slightly. She stumbled, but didn't fall. Her heart was pounding. Laughter echoed. Some students watched. Others looked away, pretending not to see. No one helped. No teacher was nearby. Amara felt heat rise in her face. She wasn't sure if it was anger, sadness, or shame. It'd be all of them together. Her hands clutched the torn fabric. She could feel tears pushing at her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. She walked out of the gym quietly. Her dress torn, her night ruined, but her back straight and her head held high. Her mother was waiting in the car. When she saw her daughter, her face fell, but she didn't ask anything. She simply opened her arms, and Amara stepped into them. That night, Amara didn't cry. She lay on her bed, staring at the ceiling again, just like the night before school started. But this time, she wasn't thinking about being accepted or liked. She was thinking about something else. She remembered the laughter, the looks, the silence, the way no one stood up for her. And for the first time, she felt something inside her shift. She had tried to be kind, quiet, respectful, and still they hurt her. Maybe it was time to stop hiding. Maybe it was time to fight, not with fists or anger, but with something stronger. Her silence had been their power. Tomorrow, things would begin to change. Not because others would treat her better, but because she would no longer let them make her feel less than who she truly was. They had torn her dress, but they had no idea what they had just woken up inside her. The night after the school dance, Amara lay in bed, staring at the ceiling in the dark. Her dress, the one her mother had lovingly stitched, was lying torn in the laundry basket. Golden threads hung loosely, the fabric stretched in damaged wear. It had been pulled. The laughter of Kayla and her friends echoed in her ears like a bad song stuck in her head. She blinked, trying to clear the sound, but it wouldn't go away. She hadn't cried at the dance. She hadn't let anyone see her pain. But now, in the quiet of her room, her chest felt heavy, like something was pressing on it. Still, the tears wouldn't come. Her mother came into the room quietly and sat on the edge of her bed. She didn't ask questions. She had seen the dress. She had seen Amara's face. Her eyes, once bright and curious, now looked tired and distant. Her mother gently held her hand and said only one thing: "You did nothing wrong." But Amara didn't speak. She just nodded. The next day was a Sunday. Amara stayed in her room most of the day. Her phone buzzed a few times, but she didn't check it. She already knew what would be on it. Photos, maybe, or videos. Students might be talking about her online, laughing behind screens the same way they had laughed in the gym. She wanted to scream, to break something, but she didn't. She just sat there, frozen. By Monday morning, she had made a choice. She wasn't going to hide. She wasn't going to cry in the bathroom or fake being sick to avoid school. She wore a simple outfit and tied her hair back. She looked in the mirror and told herself, "You are not weak." Her mother offered to walk her to school, but Amara shook her head. She wanted to face it alone. As she entered the school hallway, she felt the eyes again. Students turned to look. Some whispering, some giggling. One boy looked at her and muttered, "There's the drama queen." Another girl walked past her, bumping her shoulder on purpose. But Amara kept walking, her face calm, her steps steady. Inside, her heart was pounding, but she wouldn't let them see in the classroom. The teacher didn't mention the dance. No one did, but the air felt thick. Kayla sat at her usual spot, surrounded by her group. She smiled smugly when she saw Amara. "Hey," she said in a fake sweet voice. "Nice dress on Friday." So, ... original. Her friends burst into laughter. Amara said nothing. She looked at Kayla, her eyes strong and steady, then turned away and opened her book. That small moment, refusing to give her a reaction, made Kayla pause. She hadn't expected silence. She had expected tears, or anger, or fear. But Amara's calm face made her feel ... uncertain. At lunch, Amara again sat alone. She noticed a few students glancing at her and then quickly looking away. She could feel the judgment. But she also noticed something else: one girl at the next table who didn't laugh, another boy sitting nearby who looked uncomfortable but didn't speak. They weren't friends, but maybe they weren't enemies either. The week passed slowly. The bullying didn't stop completely, but it changed. It became more silent, more eyes, more whispers, fewer words. Kayla and her group still ruled the hallways. But now, Amara no longer flinched. She didn't look away. She didn't hide. She walked tall. And that bothered them more than they expected. One afternoon, something happened that shook Amara more than the bullying. She was in the library looking for a book when she overheard two girls whispering behind the shelf. "Did you see that video? Someone posted it. The dance thing." "Yeah, I watched it like 3 times. It's kind of sad, though. I mean, they really ripped her dress. She looked so embarrassed, I would have died." Amara froze. There was a video. She didn't want to see it, but she had to know. That night, when she got home, she opened her phone and searched for it. And there it was, a short, shaky video posted on a student's profile. The title said, "New Girls. Fashion fail at the dance." Her heart beat faster as she tapped on it. The video showed her standing by herself in the gym. Then Kayla and her group walked over, then the laughter, and the tearing of the dress. The comments underneath were a mix: some laughing emojis, some "oh my god, that's so mean," others just quiet. Amara stared at the screen for a long time. Then, for the first time since the dance, she cried. She cried hard, not because she was weak, but because holding in all that pain had finally broken the dam inside her. Her mother heard her and came running. She didn't say anything this time, just hugged her tightly and let her cry. Later that night, after the tears stopped, Amara wiped her face and stood up. She felt different. She wasn't ashamed anymore. She was angry. Not the kind of anger that makes you scream, but the kind that makes you want to change something. The kind that says, "I've had enough." She sat down and opened her notebook. She started writing everything: every insult, every moment, every name, every time someone pushed her or laughed at her. She wrote down dates, places, details. She didn't plan it, but the pen just kept moving. Her words filled page after page. She even wrote about how she felt alone, embarrassed, small. Then she remembered her mother's old phone, which had a recording app. The next day, she started carrying it in her bag. She turned it on when she entered school, just in case. She wasn't going to let anything be denied again. If they said something cruel, she'd have proof. She had stayed silent too long. She also began reading. Not just stories, but law school rules, anti-bullying policies, human rights. It wasn't easy. Some of it was confusing. But she asked her mother to help her understand. Her mother explained things one by one, and slowly, Amara began to see a bigger picture. She wasn't powerless. One weekend, while walking to a nearby grocery store with her mom, they passed a small gym. Inside, she saw people punching bags and lifting weights. One woman in particular was practicing boxing, her movements strong and sharp. Amara stopped to stare. Her mother noticed and smiled. "Want to go in?" At first, Amara hesitated. but then she nodded. Inside, the gym smelled of sweat and energy. The coach, an older man with a rough beard and kind eyes, introduced himself as Coach Benny. He asked Amara why she wanted to learn boxing. She didn't know what to say. To protect myself, she finally said. Coach Benny nodded.
That's
A good start. But you'll learn more than punches here. You'll learn control, strength, and how to never give up. Amara started training twice a week. It was hard. Her arms ached. Her legs felt like jelly. But with every punch she threw, she felt stronger. She wasn't just fighting the air, she was fighting fear, anger, shame. Coach Benny taught her too. Focus, to breathe, to stand her ground. At school, things slowly began to shift. She started noticing other kids, who were also quiet, who also sat alone. One of them, a boy named Luis, was always reading comic books. One day, Amara sat near him and asked what he was reading. He looked surprised, but then smiled and showed her. From then on, they talked often. She also met a girl named Priya who had been laughed at for her accent, and another girl, Zoe, who had stopped coming to school dances after people made fun of her weight. Amara talked to them, and they talked back. She started realizing she wasn't alone. Together, they formed a small group. They didn't call it anything. They didn't tell anyone. But they supported each other. If someone was being bullied, the others would walk with them, sit with them, back them up. One day, Amara saw Kayla trying to trip Zoe in the hallway. Amara stepped in. She didn't shout. She simply stood in front of Zoe and said, "You're not doing that anymore." Kayla laughed. "Oh, really? Who's going to stop me?" Amara didn't blink. "Me." Kayla's smile faded. For the first time, her power didn't work. Amara's calm voice, her steady eyes, they scared her more than any shout would have. Kayla turned away, muttering something under her breath. Amara realized something that day. Bullies feed on fear. When you stop being afraid, they start losing power. She was no longer the quiet new girl. She was still alone in many ways. But she wasn't broken. She was preparing. And soon she would rise, not as a victim, but as a fighter no one could ignore. Every morning felt a little different now. Amara still woke up in the same small room, still tied her thick curls back in a neat braid, and still walked to school past the same rows of quiet houses. But inside her, something had changed. There was a fire, now a quiet, powerful fire. She didn't feel like hiding anymore. She didn't feel weak anymore. She was still alone in many ways, but that loneliness no longer felt like emptiness. It felt like strength, like space, where something new could grow. The memory of what happened at the school dance hadn't gone away. She could still see Kayla's smirking face, still hear the laughter, still feel the fabric of her dress tearing in front of a crowd. The video of that horrible moment still floated around online, and sometimes when she passed people in the hallways, she wondered if they had watched it. But now, when she felt that pain bubbling up again, she didn't let it freeze her. She let it drive her. Amara had a notebook where she wrote everything, not just her feelings, but facts, dates, names, actions. She was building her story like a puzzle, piece by piece. She wrote about how long the bullying had been going on, about the teachers who looked away, about the lunchroom where she sat alone, about every comment and push and smirk that made her feel small. She didn't know exactly what she would do with all of it, but she knew one day it would matter. Her story wouldn't stay silent. Every day she carried her mother's old phone. With her, it was always in her bag, recording quietly whenever she walked through the hallways. She had already captured a few important things: Kayla calling her a charity case, one of the other girls mocking her accent, someone making fun of her hair. Amara didn't plan to fight them with her fists. She would fight them with proof. Outside of school, she kept going to Coach Benny's gym. The boxing lessons had become her favorite part of the week. Not because she wanted to hurt anyone, but because she had finally found a place where she could release everything she felt without being judged. With every punch she threw, she let go of the shame, the fear, the sadness. She felt her body grow stronger, and with it, her mind. She learned how to breathe when she was nervous, how to stand firm, how to block not just attacks but doubt. Coach Benny became more than just a trainer, became someone who believed in her. One evening, after a hard training session, he looked at her and said, "You've got a storm in you, kid. But you've also got a compass. Don't let them steal that from you." At school, Amara began to walk a little differently. She didn't keep her eyes down anymore, met people's stares head on. She started answering questions in class. Again, not to prove herself, but because she knew she had every right to speak. Some students noticed. Some whispered about her, others kept their distance. But just a few started to see her differently. There was Zoe, the quiet girl who used to eat lunch behind the library, and Priya, who got teased for how she said certain words. Luis, who never talked much, but once offered her a comic book after seeing her alone. These were kids who didn't fit into the groups run by people like Kayla. They had all been targets in some way. Amara began to sit with them. She started small conversations. She listened. Slowly, they began to smile more when they saw her. One afternoon, Amara told them about what happened at the dance. Not everything's just enough. Zoe's eyes filled with tears. Priya looked angry. Luis nodded slowly and said, "They think they can get away with anything." And Amara said, "Maybe they can, till we stop them." From that day, they started meeting during lunch in the art room, where the teacher let them stay quietly. They didn't call themselves a group, but that's what they became. They didn't plan to fight anyone. They just made a promise to look out for each other, to not let anyone feel alone. If someone was being bullied, they would walk with them. If someone got mocked, they would speak up. Their presence didn't go unnoticed. Kayla and her group saw them sitting together and laughed. "Look," Kayla said loudly one day, "the misfits made a club." But this time Amara didn't feel hurt. She looked straight at Kayla and smiled calmly, like she knew something Kayla didn't. Single quotes. To one day in the school hallway, Zoe tripped over Kayla's backpack, which had been placed on purpose in her path. When she hit the ground, Kayla laughed loudly. Before Zoe could even get up, Amara was there, helping her. Then she turned to Kayla and said in a clear, steady voice, "You're not doing this anymore." The hallway fell quiet. Kayla stared. At her, or what? Amara didn't shout. She didn't threaten. She simply said, "You'll see." And Kayla, for the first time, looked unsure. That afternoon, Amara opened her notebook and added the new incident. She had enough now. Had enough. Words, enough evidence, enough courage. She asked her mother to help her write a letter to the principal. It was more than a complaint. It was a report. With dates, details, witness names, and a copy of the video still online. She also attached a short note that read, "This isn't just happening to me. It's happening to others too. Please listen." Her mother walked with her to the school office the next morning. Together, they handed the folder to the secretary, who promised to give it directly to the principal. Amara didn't know what would happen next, but she felt a small weight lift off her chest. She had spoken. She had acted. After school that day, Amara sat down and recorded a video. Not for attention, not for revenge, but for truth. She sat in her room, wearing one of her mother's handmade shirts, and looked into the camera. "Name is Amara," she began, "and I'm the girl from the video you might have seen." Her voice shook a little, but she kept going. She spoke about the bullying, the fear, the way people laughed while she was being humiliated. But she also spoke about strength, about choosing to stand up, about fighting back not with violence, but with voice. "I used to wish I could disappear," she said. "No, I just want to be seen for who I really am, not for my skin, my clothes, or my silence, but for my heart, my voice, and my right to belong." She ended the video with a quiet sentence. "If this has happened to you, you're not alone.
We are stronger
together." She posted it online and then turned off her phone. The next morning, when she turned it back on, her heart skipped. Her video had been shared hundreds of times overnight. Comments poured in, some from students she didn't even know, others from kids in different schools. Some messages were from adults, parents, teachers, even activists. Her brave, strong, inspiring. The school had no choice now. The principal called Amara and her mother into the office. He looked uncomfortable, but serious. He promised to investigate the bullying and take action. He thanked her for being honest, for speaking up, Within a week, things started changing. Kayla and her closest friends were called into meetings. The school announced a new policy on bullying and discrimination. Teachers were instructed to be more aware. A support counselor was assigned to check in with students who had reported abuse. Some students still gave Amara weird looks. Not everyone became her friend. But she no longer felt invisible. The principal invited Amara to speak at an upcoming school assembly. At first she said no. But then she remembered all the students like Zoe and Priya who had thanked her quietly. She remembered the ones still suffering in silence. She said yes. That night her mother made her a new dress. It was simple sky blue with gold threads on the edges. Strong fabric, bold color. When Amara tried it on, her mother smiled and said, "You're not just wearing a dress this time. You're wearing your story." The fire inside Amara wasn't angry anymore. It was steady, bright, and unshakable. She wasn't done yet. Not by far. The fighter was just getting started. Amara had always thought that power belonged to the loudest people, the ones who shouted in hallways, made fun of others, or wore fancy clothes, and walked like they owned everything. But after everything she had been through, she realized real power didn't need to be loud. It could be quiet. It could live in silence, in kindness, in calm strength. And now, she carried that power inside her. After her meeting with the principal, something changed in the air around school. Students who used to laugh when Kayla insulted someone were quieter now. Some avoided eye contact with Amara, unsure of what to say. A few students who had never spoken to her before gave her small smiles when they passed her in the hallway. One even whispered, "I saw your video. You're brave." Amara didn't smile back right away, but her heart warmed. Week later, Amara got a message in her school locker. It was handwritten on notebook paper, with shaky letters. "Thank you for standing up. I didn't think anyone could do it. It gave me hope." There was no name on it, but that didn't matter. One message was worth more than all the FCE insults she'd faced. The principal had promised action, and slowly the changes began. The school called in the parents of Kayla and her group. They were given warnings, and some were suspended for a few days. More importantly, the teachers were now asked to watch for bullying more carefully. For the first time, students were being told that cruelty wasn't normal or acceptable. Amara knew this was just the beginning. A few punishments wouldn't fix everything, but she also knew she had done something important, something bigger than herself. She had cracked the wall that had kept people like her silent. One day after class, her English teacher pulled her aside. She was an older woman with kind eyes who had never said much before. "Amara," she said softly, "I've been teaching here for 20 years, and I want you to know I've never seen a student do what you've done. You reminded us that we all have a responsibility. Thank you." Amara didn't know how to respond. She just nodded. The following week, the school announced a student lead assembly to talk about respect, bullying, and courage. The principal asked Amara if she would like to speak. At first, she panicked. The idea of standing in front of the whole school, every student, every teacher, even the ones who had hurt her, made her stomach twist. But that night, when she told her mother held her hand and said, "You've already done the hard part. This is just you sharing what's already in your heart." So, Amara agreed. She spent 2 days writing her speech. She didn't try to sound too smart or too strong. She just wrote honestly. She wrote about how it felt to be laughed at, how it felt to be alone in the lunchroom, how it felt when her dress was torn in front of everyone. And then she wrote about how she decided not to be silent anymore. She wrote about how speaking up gave her strength, and how she didn't want any other student to feel invisible the way she had. On the day of the assembly, Amara wore the blue dress her mother had made. As she walked onto the stage in the gym, she could feel hundreds of eyes on her. She gripped the microphone with both hands. Her heart beat fast, but her voice was steady. "I didn't ask to be a fighter," she said. "I just wanted to be accepted. But when you are pushed too many times, when you're hurt and ignored and laughed at too, have to choose. Be silent forever or speak up." I chose to speak up. She talked for only 5 minutes. But in those 5 minutes, she said everything that needed to be said. She didn't cry, she didn't yell, she stood tall. And when she finished, the gym was silent for a moment. Then the clapping began. It started slowly, then grew louder. Some students stood up, others nodded. Even the teachers looked moved. Amara looked into the crowd and saw Zoe, Priya, and Luis standing with tears in their eyes. She saw a few students from Kayla's group sitting with stiff expressions. But even they didn't say anything. After the assembly, students came up to her one by one. Some told her they were sorry for laughing before. Some shared their own stories, how they had been bullied in the past, how they had stayed quiet out of fear. One boy said he hadn't told anyone he was gay, but after hearing her speak, he wanted to be brave too. Amara realized something powerful. One voice could open the door for many. Soon, the school gave her and a few others permission to start a support group. It was called Voices Rising. They met once a week after school. Students could come and talk about what they were going through. No judgment, no pressure, just support. Mara was the one who started each meeting, reminding everyone they mattered, no matter who they were. In one of those meetings, a girl named Rachel spoke up for the first time. She'd always sat quietly in the back of the room. But this time, she raised her hand and said, "I used to laugh at people because I thought that's how I could fit in. But all it did was make me feel empty inside. I want to change." Number 1 judged her. Instead, the whole room clapped softly. That was the kind of place Amara had helped create. Outside of school, Amara continued her boxing lessons. Coach Benny noticed the change in her. "You don't flinch anymore," he said. One evening, as they practiced, "You move like you know who you are." "I do," Amara said, smiling. Finally, news of her story spread beyond the school. The video she had posted kept getting shared. One local newspaper interviewed her. Community center invited her to speak. Her mother received messages from people thanking them for raising such a brave daughter. Amara was even invited to a youth conference where students from other schools came to hear her talk. At the conference, she met teenagers from all kinds of backgrounds, some rich, some poor, some who had faced racism, bullying, or discrimination. Like her, they shared stories. They cried, they laughed. And through it all, Amara felt something bigger than herself. She was part of something powerful, a movement, a wave of change. Back at school, things weren't perfect. Some students still gave her cold looks. Some whispered behind her back, but it didn't hurt the same way anymore. She had built a shield made of truth, courage, and support. One afternoon, while walking in the hallway, she saw Kayla standing by her locker, alone. For the first time, she didn't have her group around her. Her face looked tired, her eyes less proud. As Amara walked past, Kayla looked at her and said softly, "You got what you wanted, huh? Everyone loves you now?" Amara stopped. She turned around, looked at Kayla, and said calmly, "I never wanted attention. I just wanted to be treated like a person." Kayla didn't reply, but she didn't smirk either. She just looked away. Amara didn't feel like a winner. She didn't need to win over Kayla. She had already won something more important, her self-respect, her voice, her place. She walked to class, head high. Amara's life wasn't perfect, but it was honest now. She was no longer scared of being seen. She no longer wished to disappear. She had learned how to stand, not just for herself, but for others too. And every time someone asked her how she became so strong, she told them the truth. "They tore my dress," she'd say, "but they couldn't tear me." And that truth was more powerful than anything her bullies could ever say. The school auditorium was packed with students, teachers, and parents. Everyone was sitting quietly, waiting for the annual Student Awards ceremony to begin. Banners hung from the walls, colorful lights shined on the stage, and rows of shiny trophies lined the long table near the front. It was supposed to be a happy day, a day to celebrate students for their achievements. But for Amara, it meant something even deeper. She sat near the front row, wearing a handmade dress her mother had sewn just for this day. It was sky blue with golden borders, soft and graceful, yet strong just like her. The last time she had worn a handmade dress to a school event, it had ended in shame and pain, but this time she wore it with pride. Her head was high, her hands didn't shake, and her heart, though nervous, was steady. Her name was on the award list. She had been chosen to receive the Bravery and Leadership Award. It was a new award, created that year after everything that had happened. The principal had announced it 2 weeks ago, saying it would be given to a student who showed not just academic strength, but personal courage and the power to inspire others. And everyone in the school already knew who the first winner would be. Amara didn't need a trophy to prove her worth. She had already won something bigger than awards. But being recognized for her courage meant that her pain hadn't been ignored, that her voice had finally been heard. As her name was called, the crowd began to clap. Some students stood up, clapping harder. Zoe, Priya, Luis, and others from the Voices Rising group were all cheering with tears in their eyes. Coach Benny was there too, sitting in the back, smiling with pride. Amara's mother clapped with both hands over her heart, her eyes shining. Amara stood up and walked toward the stage. Her steps were calm, slow, full of strength. As she took the microphone, she looked around the large room. She saw so many faces, some friendly, some unsure, even some who had once mocked her. And she knew this moment was not just about her. She spoke softly at first, but clearly. A year ago, she began, I walked into this school as the new girl. I wore a dress that made me feel proud. But instead of kindness, I was met with silence, whispers, and laughter. The room was completely silent now. Everyone listening was hurt. Not just by the people who tore my dress, but by those who watched and said nothing. I thought I was alone, thought no one cared. But slowly, I realized I wasn't the only one being treated that way. She paused, her eyes scanning the audience. I spoke up not because I was brave, but because I had no choice. I couldn't stay quiet anymore, and when I did, something amazing happened. Others spoke up too, and we stood together. That's when things started to change. Clapping came again, louder this time. I want to say something to anyone here who feels invisible, or different, or scared to speak. Your voice matters. You matter. Never let anyone make you feel small, because you are different. Your difference is your strength. She ended her speech with one quiet, powerful line. They tore my dress. But they couldn't tear me. The room erupted into applause. Even the teachers were clapping, some wiping tears from their eyes. The principal shook her hand and handed her the trophy. But the real reward was the way so many students now looked at her, not with pity, not with judgment, but with respect. After the ceremony, many people came to talk to her. Some students said they wanted to join her group. One girl said she was thinking of sharing her own story. A teacher said she had started speaking up when she saw bullying in the hallway. Amara smiled and thanked everyone. But inside she knew this was just the beginning. The work wasn't over. Change didn't happen in one speech or one assembly. It had to grow like a tree's low, patiently, with care. She and her friends from Voices Rising kept meeting every week. More and more students started joining. They made posters about kindness and respect and placed them around school. They helped younger students feel safe. When someone was bullied, they stood up together, not with anger, but with calm courage. Slowly, the school began to feel different. Not perfect, but better. Even Kayla, who had once been the leader of the Bullies, began to change. She stopped walking with her old group. She became quiet, stayed to herself. One afternoon, Amara found a note in her locker. It had no name on it, but she recognized the handwriting. It read, I was wrong. I hurt you. I was jealous, and I didn't understand you. I'm sorry, Amara. Didn't know what to do with the note at first. She felt a mix of emotions, anger, surprise, sadness. But later that evening, she thought about it again. Forgiveness didn't mean forgetting. It didn't mean what happened was okay. But maybe it meant letting go of the weight. And moving forward, the next day she saw Kayla sitting alone in the courtyard. Amara walked by, slowly, paused, and gave a small nod. Kayla looked up, surprised, then gave a quiet nod back. It wasn't a friendship, but it was a start. Outside of school, Amara kept boxing. She trained harder than ever, not because she wanted to fight others, but because it reminded her of her strength. Her punches had purpose. Her feet moved with rhythm. Coach Benny sometimes brought in younger girls to watch her train. "This is Amara," he'd say. "She fights with her heart." One day, a local news channel came to the gym to interview her. They asked her what message she wanted to give to the world. She looked at the camera and said, "Don't be afraid to be different. Don't be afraid to stand alone. Because when you stand for truth, you're never truly alone." That interview was shared across the city. People from other schools, even from other countries, sent her messages. Some shared their own stories of bullying and how her story helped them speak up. A few schools even asked her to visit and talk. To their students at one event, she met a girl who had stopped going to school because of bullying. The girl said, "After I watched your video, I wore my natural hair to school for the first time. I was scared, but I did it." Amara hugged her and said, "That's the bravest thing you could have done." Months passed, but Amara never stopped. Speaking, she became a voice for those who didn't know how to speak yet. She helped change her school, her community, and even the hearts of people who once doubted her. But more than anything, she changed herself. She was no longer the quiet, new girl. No longer the girl sitting alone in the cafeteria. No longer the girl whose dress was torn. She was a leader, a fighter, an unstoppable force. And she never forgot where it started, from a moment of pain, a moment of cruelty, but also from a moment when she decided to rise. One evening, as she sat at home with her mother, they looked at the dress that had been torn at the dance. Her mother had kept it carefully folded in a drawer. "Do you want me to throw it away?" she asked. Amara shook her head. "No," she said. "I want to keep it." "What?" "Why, because it reminds me who I was," she said. "And how far I've come?" They sat quietly for a moment. Then Amara added, "Maybe I'll speak in more schools one day. Maybe I'll help others find their voice." Her mother smiled. "You already are." That night, Amara looked out her window at the stars. She remembered every hurtful word, every lonely lunch, every tear she didn't let fall. But she also remembered the moments of power, the first time she stood up, the first time someone thanked her, the first time she felt truly seen. She knew the world was still full of people who would try to tear others down, but she also knew the world had people like her, people who would lift others up, and now she was one of them. The girl whose dress had been torn was no longer a victim. She had become a hero, not just for herself, but for everyone who had ever felt invisible. She had found her voice, and she would never be silent again.